The journey begins. At the tender age of 13, Ellen DeGeneres was thrust into the complicated and often painful realities of life. When her parents, who had once seemed inseparable, decided to go their separate ways, Ellen was forced to confront the emotional chaos that followed. The once comforting rhythms of her childhood were replaced by an unfamiliar silence, a void that seemed to echo throughout her world. The walls of their home in New Orleans felt colder, the laughter less frequent, and the spark in her mother's eyes began to dim. After the divorce, Ellen and her mother relocated to Atlanta, Texas, hoping that a change of scenery would somehow ease the weight of the loss they were both grappling with. However, the sadness her mother was experiencing was palpable, and Ellen, in her unique way, decided to step in as the healer. She couldn't fix what had been broken, but she could help her mother find moments of light amidst the darkness. Ellen, like many young people, instinctively turned to humor as a tool for survival. But what set her apart was the depth of compassion that fueled her comedic instincts. Watching her mother sink further into sadness, Ellen could not bear the thought of her slipping away into depression. She knew that laughter had a special power, so she began using it to break through the barriers that the sorrow had built around her mother's heart. It began innocently enough. Ellen would mimic her mother's dancing, a ridiculous rendition that was so exaggerated it was impossible not to laugh. At first, it was playful, almost silly, a way of distracting from the heaviness that had overtaken their lives. But as Ellen saw her mother's mouth begin to curl into a smile, and then heard the soft chuckle that soon followed, she realized something remarkable. With every laugh, her mother was starting to reawaken. Ellen didn't stop there. She soon began to make fun of her mother's laughter, exaggerating it until her mother was laughing so hard that she cried. It was a cathartic release, a form of emotional rebirth. Ellen's playful teasing turned into a way of drawing her mother out of the darkness. For the first time in a long time, Ellen saw her mother truly alive again, free from the emotional weight that had threatened to swallow her. Ellen's comedy wasn't just a coping mechanism, it was a lifeline. By making her mother laugh, she was doing more than just providing temporary relief. She was teaching her the importance of resilience, of finding joy even in the midst of hardship. Ellen learned early on that humor could heal, that laughter wasn't just about entertainment, it was a form of connection, a bridge that could bring people back from the edge. What Ellen didn't realize at the time was that this early experience of using comedy as a tool to heal others was laying the foundation for a future she had not yet imagined. The ability to connect with people through humor would become the hallmark of her career, and more importantly, it would be the key to her own survival in the face of the storms that were yet to come. But for now, her focus remained on her mother, helping her reclaim a sense of joy that seemed so far out of reach. Ellen's adolescent years were marked by a deep empathy for others. She had already learned that life could be cruel, but she had also discovered that it was possible to laugh in the face of that cruelty, to find light even in the darkest of times. The laughter she shared with her mother was more than just a distraction. It was an act of love, a declaration that they could survive this together. As Ellen entered her teenage years, she carried this lesson with her. While others around her may have been focused on finding their place in the world, Ellen had already found something more valuable, an understanding of the healing power of laughter. And as she would soon come to realize, this simple truth would be a guiding force throughout her life. In those quiet moments with her mother, Ellen wasn't just using comedy to mask the pain. She was beginning to understand the importance of facing that pain head-on, with resilience, humor, and an open heart. That was the first chapter of Ellen's journey, a journey that would see her transform from a young girl with a knack for comedy into one of the most beloved figures in entertainment. But like all great stories, Ellen's was just beginning. And as she would soon discover, the road ahead would not be an easy one. However, with humor in her arsenal, and the lessons learned from those early days with her mother, she would face every challenge with the same courage, resilience, and joy that had helped her overcome the darkness of her youth. The tragedy that transformed, a heartbroken journey toward purpose. As Ellen DeGeneres transitioned from the fragile years of adolescence into early adulthood, life took her on a tumultuous journey that would test her resolve in ways she never expected. While her early experiences with comedy had already shown her how laughter could bring light to the darkest corners, it was an unspeakable tragedy that would forever alter her path, making her stronger and more determined than she could have ever imagined. At 19, Ellen's world was rocked by a devastating loss: the sudden death of her girlfriend in a car accident. It was a shock that would shatter anyone's sense of normalcy, but for Ellen, the grief was compounded by an eerie and haunting detail. She had driven past the very scene of the crash without even realizing that her girlfriend was inside the wrecked vehicle. The crushing weight of that reality, the images of the accident playing in her mind, and the feeling of being unable to do anything about it plunged Ellen into an abyss of grief. The tragedy left Ellen feeling inconsolable, the kind of heartache that no one could truly understand unless they had experienced it themselves. It wasn't just the loss of her love, but the pain of knowing that she could have been there, that perhaps if she had known, she could have done something to prevent the accident. The guilt, confusion, and sorrow were unbearable. In the days that followed, Ellen found herself questioning everything. It felt as though her world had crumbled in an instant, leaving her alone in a desolate emotional landscape. Her grief was so deep that it prompted her to have a dialogue with God, asking, "Why? What did I do wrong?" She wasn't just mourning the loss of her girlfriend. She was grieving the loss of the life she had imagined, the future she had hoped to build. And as anyone who has ever experienced heartbreak knows, it can feel like you are being stripped of everything you once held dear. During this devastating time, Ellen found herself turning inward, retreating from the world as she struggled to understand the meaning behind her pain. She had always used humor to cope with life's challenges, but now, in the face of a loss so profound, even her beloved comedy seemed distant and irrelevant. The light she had once shared with others seemed to have been extinguished, and all that remained was a pervasive sense of hopelessness. Yet it was in this moment of profound darkness that Ellen found herself at a crossroads. It was in the rawness of her sorrow that she made an important decision, not to wallow in despair, but to confront her pain head-on, to channel it in ways that might one day lead her to something greater. The road ahead would be long and painful, but Ellen was not one to shy away from the challenges life threw her way. During this period of profound loss and isolation, Ellen took on a series of odd jobs to keep herself afloat. From being a house painter to working as a vacuum salesperson, waitress, and even an oyster shucker, Ellen did whatever it took to survive. These jobs were not glamorous, but they served as a form of distraction, something that allowed her to keep going while she processed her grief. In these moments, Ellen learned a lot about herself. She understood what it meant to struggle, to be humbled, and to keep going even when life didn't offer any guarantees. It was also during this time that Ellen's desire to make people laugh, to find joy in the midst of her own sorrow, began to resurface. She had always been drawn to comedy, but now, as she worked these various jobs, she began performing stand-up comedy at local clubs. The stage, once an unfamiliar territory, became her sanctuary. It was there that Ellen rediscovered the healing power of laughter, not just for others, but for herself. As Ellen continued to rise in the world of comedy, her personal life took a turn towards something else entirely. She began to understand that, beyond the fame and the recognition, there was a deeper purpose to her life, a calling to use her platform for something greater than herself. The healing she had found through comedy, the way she had used laughter to pull herself from the depths of her grief, became a powerful tool for helping others. But this newfound success didn't come without its own set of challenges. Ellen was about to face the most defining moment of her career and her life, a moment that would force her to confront not just the expectations of the world, but the prejudices and fears that had been deeply ingrained in society for years. It was a moment that would make her question everything once again. And yet, it would ultimately propel her toward a destiny she had yet to fully understand. The road was far from easy. The world didn't always welcome a comedian with such raw honesty, but Ellen had already learned how to weather storms. Despite her deep sadness, she pushed forward, honing her craft, finding her voice in the world of comedy. By 1984, she was touring the country, performing stand-up comedy in clubs across the nation. It wasn't an overnight success, but Ellen's determination was unwavering. She wasn't just performing for the sake of laughter. She was performing to heal herself, to reclaim the light she had once lost. In 1994, Ellen reached a milestone that would change her life forever. She won the Showtime Funniest Person in America contest. It was a major recognition of her talent, and it opened the door for more opportunities. Her career began to take off in ways that she had never imagined, but even as she gained fame, the wounds from her past were never far behind. The tragedy of losing her girlfriend was still a part of her, a scar that would never fully fade, but it was also the driving force behind her success. The breakthrough and the backlash, finding strength in authenticity. By the late 1990s, Ellen DeGeneres had become a rising star in Hollywood. Her stand-up comedy had earned her a dedicated following, and her acting career had begun to take flight. In 1994, she landed a starring role in the ABC sitcom Ellen, a show that showcased her unique brand of humor and won the hearts of viewers nationwide. But despite her growing fame, Ellen was still wrestling with the same questions she had faced since that tragic loss of her girlfriend years before. Who was she really? And what did she want her legacy to be? In the midst of her professional success, Ellen found herself at a crossroads, a moment that would test her more than anything else in her career. She had spent years building a public persona, a life that seemed to reflect the conventional standards of success. A hit TV show, a growing fan base, and the trappings of celebrity. Yet, there was a part of Ellen that felt like she was living a lie. She knew she couldn't continue to hide the truth of who she was, no matter how much the world expected her to. And so, in 1997, Ellen made the bold decision to take a step that would forever change her life and the trajectory of her career. On the cover of Time magazine, she publicly came out as gay. It was an unprecedented and groundbreaking moment in television history. Ellen was the first lead actress in a sitcom to come out, a decision that would reverberate through the entertainment industry and beyond. The moment was historic, and yet it wasn't without its cost. Almost immediately after her public revelation, Ellen was canceled. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. Advertisers pulled their support, the network executives grew nervous, and the world seemed to turn its back on Ellen. The very thing that had once been her greatest asset, her authenticity, was now seen as a threat. The entertainment industry, not ready to embrace a lesbian lead on a primetime network show, made it clear that Ellen's decision to be true to herself had come with a steep price. In the wake of the cancellation, Ellen was devastated. She had given everything to her show, pouring her heart and soul into the character of Ellen Morgan. And yet, in the blink of an eye, it was all gone. Her once thriving career had come to a screeching halt. She found herself facing the harsh reality that, in a world that often rewards conformity, standing in one's truth can sometimes lead to profound personal and professional costs. But even in the darkest of moments, Ellen refused to let the weight of the world define her. It would have been easy to slip into despair, to retreat from the public eye, and never look back. After all, everything she had worked for seemed to be crumbling in front of her. She could have let the anger, the frustration, and the hurt take over, but instead, Ellen chose something much harder: resilience. For the next few years, Ellen faced the daunting challenge of rebuilding her life and her career. Her once bright future now seemed clouded with uncertainty. The phone stopped ringing, the opportunities dried up, and the world appeared to have moved on without her. But in the silence, in the solitude, Ellen found a powerful sense of self. She understood that, no matter what, she could never go back to hiding who she was. During this time of profound struggle, Ellen sought solace in the simplest of things: self-care, personal reflection, and rediscovery of her passions. She meditated, worked out, and began writing again. Writing for herself, not for an audience. Through these quiet moments of introspection, Ellen realized that her story had the power to help others. It wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about being authentic, about showing up in the world as your true self, regardless of the consequences. Her comeback was neither fast nor easy, but it was undeniably powerful. In 2001, Ellen's career began to turn around when she landed a role in The Ellen Show, a new sitcom that allowed her to once again embrace her comedic roots. The show didn't enjoy the same level of success as Ellen, but it was a sign that Ellen was slowly but surely finding her footing once again. Then, in 2003, Ellen took on a role in Finding Nemo, voicing the now iconic character of Dory, a forgetful yet lovable fish. The role became one of the most beloved in animated film history, and Ellen's portrayal of Dory resonated with audiences of all ages. It was a perfect fit for Ellen's joyful and optimistic spirit, and it became a turning point in her career, reminding the world of her immense talent and versatility. But the real breakthrough came a year later, in 2004, when Ellen's talk show, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, premiered. At first, the show was met with skepticism. Few believed that a daytime talk show with an openly gay host would succeed. Many TV stations were hesitant to take on the show, unsure of how it would be received. Yet, in a move that would define Ellen's career, she persisted. She knew that she had something valuable to offer: kindness, authenticity, and humor that transcended differences. The talk show was an instant success, breaking ratings records and winning over millions of viewers. Ellen's unique ability to connect with people, to make them feel seen and heard, became the cornerstone of her show. She didn't just entertain, she inspired. She made people laugh, made them think, and made them feel a little bit better about the world. Ellen's journey was far from over, but by her talk show, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, became more than just a platform for entertainment. It became a reflection of who Ellen truly was. Her kindness, compassion, and genuine connection with others made her a household name. But it was her vulnerability, her willingness to be real and raw with her audience, that made her beloved. Ellen's humor was never just a tool for distraction. It was a powerful way to break down barriers and bring people together. She didn't just tell jokes. She shared her life, her struggles and her triumphs, and in doing so, she made people feel seen and understood. Perhaps one of the greatest lessons Ellen imparted through her journey was that being true to oneself is the ultimate form of strength. Ellen risked everything to live her truth, knowing that it could cost her career, her reputation, and her livelihood. Yet, in choosing authenticity over conformity, she became a trailblazer not just for the LGBTQ+ community, but for anyone who has ever been told they don't belong. She proved that when you live in alignment with who you truly are, the world has a way of catching up with you. Ellen's story also serves as a reminder that setbacks are an essential part of the journey. No one escapes life's challenges, but how we respond to them is what defines us. Whether it was the grief of losing a loved one, the heartbreak of career setbacks, or the backlash for being unapologetically herself, Ellen demonstrated that failure is not a sign to quit. It's simply another step in the process of growth. Every failure she faced became a stepping stone that led her to greater heights, and with each one, she emerged stronger, more compassionate, and more determined than before. Her life is proof that success doesn't always look like we expect it to, and that the greatest victories often come after the most difficult battles. Ellen didn't just come back from the depths of depression or the devastation of a canceled show. She reinvented herself in a way that changed the entertainment industry and brought joy to millions. She turned every obstacle into an opportunity, every challenge into a lesson, and every setback into the fuel for her next chapter. Today, Ellen's legacy is not just one of entertainment. It's one of empathy, kindness, and the reminder that we all have the power to rise above the hardest times in our lives. She has shown us that it's okay to stumble, it's okay to fall, But what matters most is that we never stop moving forward. The key to overcoming adversity is not in avoiding it, but in embracing it with grace, humor, and an unwavering belief in ourselves. As we reflect on Ellen's incredible journey, let her story be a reminder that no matter how difficult life may seem, we are capable of bouncing back, of finding strength in the face of our darkest moments, and of using our pain to fuel our greatest accomplishments. Don't let the failures define you. Let them shape you into a stronger, more resilient person. And remember, it's not about never falling. It's about always getting back up and continuing on your path with the courage to stay true to who you are. Ellen's story teaches us that life's most challenging moments can lead us to our greatest victories, and that success is not about what you achieve, but about who you become along the way. So take the lessons of Ellen's journey to heart. Be kind to yourself, embrace the setbacks as part of the process, and never stop dancing through life, no matter how tough the road may seem. The best is yet to come, because as Ellen so beautifully demonstrates, you can't beat the person who refuses to give up.